Welcome to Find Your Way Home. I am so excited to start a four-part series with Mother Gabrielle Marie. She is the foundress and Mother Superior of the Benedictine Daughters of Divine Will, and such an inspiration to us all. There, I believe, is nothing perhaps more important and more powerful and more beautiful and more uplifting than learning about how to live in the divine will. This is God's wish for us and his mission for humanity's future, which began with the servant of God, Luisa Piccarreta. And in this book by Marcel Laflamme, he introduces us to this new kind of life. And this introductory book is really needed before you plunge into what is called the Book of Heaven, 36 volumes of Jesus speaking to servant of God, Luisa Piccarreta, introducing her and the entire world to the divine will and living in the divine will. This is an overwhelming step to take, and it even needs an introduction to the introduction. And so that is what Mother Gabrielle Marie is going to do for us in this 4-week, 4-part series. This is the first week of an introduction to this book. And I thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with us.
Well, I'm happy to be here. I don't feel I live it as well as I would like to live the divine will. I teach it. Yes, I speak what God is telling me in my heart, and I just mentioned to you before, if God doesn't have anything to say, I have nothing to say. I don't know. I never prepare talks. I just kind of live, because I feel I'm going to give him a chance to do the talking since he knows the divine will and I don't. So I do the best I can, but this is just a great book. And one thing that just struck me when I was reading the first chapter is we were intended to grow in wisdom like Jesus. Jesus grew in wisdom and grace. He said by us doing, if it wouldn't have been a fall, we would have continued to live like he did as a child, growing in wisdom and grace, getting new knowledge and living the life of God, letting Jesus relive his life in us. You can read the volumes, but if you don't apply what it says, you can't really live in his divine will. We have to ask him what his will is. So all day long, are we asking him what is his will in different situations when we can make a choice about something? Or we just do what we automatically feel like doing. So living in his will, he told Luisa, it's the greatest martyrdom. It's greater than red martyrdom. Dying to your will, never giving in to yourself, but only wanting him to do his will in you. What he wants you to do is dying to self. But the more you die to yourself, the happier you are. And the more you take on his life. And when you see him within yourself, you see him within others. And you begin to accept yourself the way he accepts you and loves you. And when that happens, you begin to accept and love others the way they are. And that's perfect joy. That's perfect joy, to see Christ in others, to love them. You fall in love with people. The more you follow him in all your activities, letting him relive his life in you, the more joy you experience because you are growing in humility and then littleness and then realizing you're nothing. And he told Luisa, realizing you're nothing is greater than humility.
Wow.
So this is a great gift, and this introductory book that is beautiful, explains it, but it's so Catholic. I mean, he brings about things from the catechism, and we want to make this truly Catholic since there's confusion out there. Some people are misunderstanding this as not being truly Catholic. Some people think, well, the church is going to change and it won't be like it is now. We have the sacraments, and because we need them, they're food and medicine for the soul. Jesus is the one who founded the church, and the church founded the scriptures. He was bringing about the Christian church, but he was living the old law and being obedient to that law until the night he died. So we must be obedient to the church now, the way the church exists now, and the way the church teaches us to live.
And truly, nothing in Luisa's writings goes against the church. In 2012, the ordinary of Luisa Piccarreta's diocese, the Diocese of Trani in Italy, issued a strong rebuke to anyone who stated that there was anything contrary to the church's teachings in Luisa's writings. And just in case you come across statements about a leaked document by Cardinal Cimiraro that came out in 2022, which stated that by this cardinal, his personal opinion that Luisa's writings contained errors, know that that has been completely rebuked and isn't part of a church pronouncement. So don't let that confuse you. All of that has been clarified.
But I think the more you read these volumes, the more your joy grows. Every time you read them, I've read them maybe over 20 times now, and every time I read them, it's like they're new. I'm learning new things because you're growing. As you read it, you're being transformed. You're understanding more and more who God is. So every time you go back to an old knowledge that you learned about, He's teaching you something different in it. It's a beautiful book. It's an amazing book.
Speaking directly to what you're saying, there's actually a passage in this introduction that speaks exactly to what you're saying. Jesus says to Luisa here, he says, "What I am showing regarding my divine will and what you are writing down could be called the gospel of the kingdom of the divine will. Nothing is opposed either to the Holy Scriptures or to the gospel that I proclaimed while on earth. On the contrary, it could be called the support for both. This will be the purpose of the countless things that I have shown you, the many surprising truths, the promises of so many benefits that I have to give the children of the fiat voluntas tua. This will be the gospel, the basis, the inexhaustible wellspring from which all will draw heavenly life, earthly happiness, and the restoration of their creation. Oh, how happy they will feel who drink eagerly in great gulps from these well springs of my knowledge, for they contain the virtue of bringing the life of heaven and of banishing all unhappiness." Wow. So these phrases in this introductory book are incredible. The Lord, through these writings, literally wants to restore humanity to the original condition we received, to be similar to Adam and to Eve. It's overwhelming what he wants to do to the human race. It's beautiful. And these volumes contain all the information that God wants us to know. And honestly, when you think about it, oftentimes, does it not feel too good to be true?
At the beginning, I felt too that this was too good to be true. And the devil tries to lead you away from this, making you think, well, this can't be real because this is too good to be true. And when I first started reading it, I thought, can this really happen? Can God do acts in us? Can I let him relive his life in me? If I call him into my activity, is he really doing it in me? Because you don't feel any different. You don't feel anything happening. But it is. Great things are happening when you call him in your activity. It's about your faith. Do you really believe it? He says, if you have faith like a mustard seed, you can move mountains. When we ask him to drink even something simple like drinking a glass of water, do you believe that he's drinking that glass of water in you? Do you believe that the eternal Father's looking down? He doesn't see you drinking that, but his son Jesus drinking that glass of water. And the more you're doing that, you're shrinking. It's getting bigger in you. And it's just a glorious way to live. But, you were just talking to Christine about the validity of this. How does the church look at this? Well, Father Elijah and I met with the postulator for Luisa's cause a couple of years ago in the Vatican, and he told us that Cardinal Ratzinger in 1997 approved all 36 volumes. Then the Vatican hired 2 other theologians to go through them. They approved, and then 2 others. So 5 times it's been approved by theologians with canon law degrees, saying that there's nothing against church teaching or morals with these beautiful writings. And people say, well, my priest or my bishop or someone tells me I shouldn't read this. Well, there's no more index. At Vatican II, the index was taken away. So you can read what you want as long as you know that it's helping you grow in holiness. I encourage you to read it. But the Bishop of Prato encouraged us years back, many years ago, when even in America people were thinking you shouldn't be reading this. He was encouraging to read it, to print it, to spread it out to our friends, just not to publish it at the time. It was kind of prophesied by Pope John Paul II, and this introductory book talks about that. He talked about the new and divine holiness coming. Pope John Paul II was mystical in it, and he knew. And also Benedict, they knew that something great was coming. And in the Catechism it states it too, and he brings that up in this book, about what the Catechism says about that, in the future church, what things would be like. The church would be renewed. Right now we see the world and the church being crucified, it's being purified, because we're getting ready for renewal. We're getting ready for a great resurrection in the church and in the world. Only God's going to transform the world and get rid of all the evil that we see all around us. But he's going to do it by people calling him in everything they do, by letting him relive his life in us. And these books help you to do that. When we realize the knowledge, when we come to understand the knowledge of God, who God is, how fantastic God is, how unbelievable God is, and he loves us so much. If we understood his love for us, we would die of joy. We couldn't live. He hides it from us. We don't feel those things. He said, blessed are those who believe without seeing, and I was praying the rosary today, and I try to do meditate on all the rounds in the divine will in the rosary. I know we're not going to talk about rounds now, but thinking back when you meditate on St. Thomas, even putting his hand in the wound of Jesus, and Jesus said, blessed are those who believe without seeing. You're not going to feel things differently when you do these, when you call him in everything you do, but you're going to be transformed. You're going to be changing little by little by little. I always tell the sisters, inch by inch, holiness is inch. Yard by yard, holiness is hard. So we're going to be transformed little by little. As you read these volumes, you apply it in your life, you're going to see how you transform little by little by little, But, the church has been longing for this. And if you read some certain parts in the Catechism, which I don't know where it is in this first chapter, but we talked about that. But the Catechism says about this, if I can find it here, it's a beautiful little book to get. Okay, the Catechism of the Catholic Church contains several passages pertaining to this renewal. In number 1043, it says, Sacred Scripture calls this mysterious renewal, which will transform humanity and the world, a new heavens and a new earth. Number 1044, in this new universe, the heavenly Jerusalem, God will have his dwelling among men. He will wipe away every tear from their eyes, and death shall be no more. Neither shall there be mourning, nor crying, nor pain any more, for the former things have passed away. And that's in Revelations 21:4. And 10:45, it says, For man, this consummation will be the final realization of the unity of the human race, which God willed from creation, and of which the Pilgrim Church has been in the nature of sacrament. Those who are united with Christ will form the community of the redeemed, the holy city of God, the bride, the wife of the Lamb. She will not be wounded any longer by sin, stains, self-love that destroy or wound the earthly community. And then in 1046 it says, For the cosmos, Revelation affirms the profound common destiny of the material world and man. The visible universe, then, is itself destined to be transformed, so that the world itself, restored to its original state, facing no further obstacles, should be at the service of the just, sharing in their glorification in the risen Jesus Christ. Then in 1049, though we must be careful to distinguish earthly progress clearly from the increase of the kingdom of Christ, such progress is a vital concern to the kingdom of God, insofar as it can contribute to the better ordering of human society. We have so much to look forward to.
People have a hard time believing that the Lord really is preparing us for a period of peace, for a period where we are united with God in a very special way, and we are not living as we are today. People have a hard time believing in this good news, even though I don't know anyone in the church, for instance, who does not believe in Fatima, Our Lady of Fatima, and what she said there. And she said, in the end, my immaculate heart will triumph, and there will be granted to earth a period of peace, an era of peace. She gives that promise after her triumph, and so we can count on that. So all these beautiful quotes that Mother just read from are in the book, Introduction to Life and the Divine Will, and along with all these incredible quotes from Jesus. So it really bolsters what we're talking about, and it's a great, great resource. Can I read this?
Yes, go ahead.
This is so beautiful. Jesus says to Luisa here, O wicked world, you are doing everything to drive me away from the face of the earth, to banish me from society, schools, conversation, from everything. You are conspiring to demolish temples and altars, to destroy my church and kill ministers, while I am preparing an era of love, the era of my third fiat. You will go your own way in order to banish me, while I will confound you by means of love. I will follow you from behind and meet you in front in order to astound you with love. And where you have banished me, I will establish my throne and will reign over you more than before, but in a more surprising manner, so much so that you yourself will fall at the foot of my throne, as if bound by the force of my love. Isn't that just beautiful?
That's beautiful. Beautiful. Everything in here is beautiful. The divine will, you read a little passage and you think, this is fantastic. This is unbelievable. This is the greatest thing. And then you read a little further, oh, this is the greatest thing. It's all unbelievable, And as you read it, you get such a joy. And he told Luisa that actually when you read this, he's with you in a very special way. And so, you feel his presence. You feel a joy. If you have a bad day, you just sit down and read the divine will for 10, 15 minutes. And your whole attitude changes. You get such a peace and such a joy. It's a tremendous gift. It's the greatest gift. And he told that to Luisa. This is the greatest gift he could give to anyone. And so we're so privileged to be alive at this time in history. And we have these beautiful writings, these beautiful books.
The Vatican said to read her writings and published an actual biography of Luisa Piccarreta. I believe it's called Son of My Will. So the Vatican not only published themselves their own biography of her, but they declared her a servant of God, which is the first step in the movement toward canonization as a saint. So that's what's going on.
Well, I've read 2 different translations so far. I never found any error.
That's good.
I've never found any problem with them. I think the book that you get on Amazon, the big blue book, is the same translation as you get from Block Printing.
Okay.
That's the same translation as you get from luisa.lev.hu. I know the young woman that translated that. She did it all before the Blessed Sacrament. And she's from Italy. She speaks fluent Italian. She went to Harvard University, graduated there, worked in the U.S. for many years. She's fluent in English, Italian, and Spanish.
Wow.
And she did it all before the Blessed Sacrament. She lived with in an apartment she rented from the Carmelite sisters attached to their monastery in San Francisco, and they allowed her to use their chapel. So there are good translations out there, and I haven't found any error in it. Now, people get confused over the mystical theology. And that can cause a problem if people have impure minds. Luisa and Jesus were so pure; they could communicate with each other in that way. My spiritual director was Father Jacques Daly, and he had a doctorate in theology, and he understood mystical theology. He explained that to me as I was reading it. And our Lord wanted Luisa to console him as a baby. He wanted to nurse on Luisa. It was all in the soul, not in the body. It was just explaining it in the physical ways to be understood, that he wants us to console him. He suffers for so many souls being lost all the time. So he wants us to console him in that way, to mother him in that way. Another time, he was pouring a bitter liquid in Luisa's mouth because he wanted her to suffer the passion. It's just a way of explaining the suffering, the cross. Another time, he was pouring a sweet liquid into Luisa because he wanted to console her to have this consolation. It's all mystical theology. And so it's not in a physical way, but in a spiritual way, a light. So if you look at it in a spiritual light, you have no problem with it.
Also, I think of Adam and Eve. They were so pure. And Luisa was the first person on earth ever, after Mother Mary, to fully live in the divine will, meaning there was no concupiscence in her whatsoever, just like there was none in Adam and Eve. So we look at Adam and Eve, and here we're saying, oh, please put a fig on it. But that's because of us. That's not because of them. They were so pure, and Luisa and Jesus, of course, are the same way.
We have to realize that, Luisa was so pure, Jesus was so pure, and, Jansenism sets in. That's why Pope John Paul II wrote the theology of the body. That's a beautiful thing. People who have a problem with that need to be set free and really study theology of the body to realize that the body's not evil. You don't look at the body in a negative way. God made everything good, and in the right context, everything is beautiful. In the sacrament of marriage, love and expressions of love are beautiful, and they're means to procreate. God gave us that as a gift. And so to look at everything in the right light, in the right context, I mean, there's some people in the divine will I've heard one. Well, I wouldn't say who, but I've heard it said in the past that sex is evil, and you're out of divine will even in marital life when you have a sexual relationship. That's one of the false teachings that gives the divine will a bad picture, but that's not in the volumes. People
No.
are teaching things that are not in the volumes
Yeah.
according to how they think about things, and if they have a
Right.
problem with purity, they may
Right.
take things in the wrong way and teach them the wrong way.
Right.
And so you have to look at that. It's truly Catholic to really live your Catholic faith, to pray your rosary, receive. Our Lady wants us to go to communion. She says daily, go to Mass daily, go to adoration. Adoration is so important, especially here in America with so many Eucharistic chapels, adoration chapels, all over, and people spending more time with Him. I don't care if there are 10 people at adoration. He sees you come and he gets tickled pink. He loves you so much. He wants you there with him. He's a prisoner of love in tabernacles and monstrances throughout the world. And he wants us to console him. That's why he wanted Luisa to console him in many ways. But he wants us to console him by sitting there with him, keeping him company. And if you might even want to read a little bit of the Divine Will before the Blessed Sacrament. Of course, you don't want to just read the whole time you're there and not talk to Jesus. He wants to speak to you. He wants you to be present to him. This Father Valenta years ago in the Divine, he was really living in the Divine Will. I think he died. But he wrote a book called From the Head to the Heart. He says we're human beings, not human doers. God wants us to live in the heart and to love. And the whole Divine Will is all about God loving us and us returning that love to him. When I was a young sister, I asked Mother Angelica, I said, how can I love God more? She said, the desire to love God more is loving him more.
Mm.
So the desire of everything in the Divine Will is him doing. He takes the desires of your heart and he makes them realities. He loves you so much. He knows what you desire. He knows your innermost motives. He knows you better than you know yourself. And he loves you so much. And he loves you so much. Mother Angelica had an experience. I've talked about it before in programs, how she found herself on a planet way out in the universe. And it was just she and God revealed to her that she was in the mind of God from all eternity. She existed in the mind of God from all eternity. Also you did, me, we all did. And that she was chosen out of billions of other people who will never be. That's how important we are to God. He chose us out of billions who will never be, and we always existed in his mind. And so she wrote a little book from that experience called Before Time Began. So I encourage you just to realize how much he loves you, to meditate on that, and if you have a problem with God's mercy, read the diary of St. Faustina. Diary, we had that before we had, I think, the writings. Well, some people had the writings of Divine Will many years ago, but I understood as they were copying some of Luisa's writings. Her writings went to the Vatican. It was kept in the archives for many years. But the Daughters of Divine Zeal and some of her relatives were writing which she wrote. And so that was circulating. So they had things circulating before it even came out of the Vatican in 1997. I think they went in to get the volumes to start the cause, Luisa's cause. This has been approved by the Church. She's a servant of God. Saint Annibale de Francia was her confessor. He put his Nihil Obstat on the first 19 volumes she wrote, and then he died before she wrote the rest. But there's a big, I think, a 10-ton statue of him outside of the Vatican. There's founders of religious communities. He's the second one on your left-hand side as you face on the Vatican. And Pope Benedict said some beautiful things about him and the Divine Will when he put that statue up in the Vatican. So he's already canonized. The Church wouldn't have canonized him if there was something wrong with the Divine Will. Because he said at the end of his life, even though he founded 2 other religious communities, the Daughters of Divine Zeal and the Rogationist Fathers, he said if he had to relive his life all over again, he would live it just promoting the Divine Will, because he felt that was the greatest thing he did in his life. This was the most important. So the Divine Will is a great gift.
Wow.
So Luisa, his will is greater than everything, because his will willed everything. His will willed creation. His will wills us to keep breathing. He's breathing in our breathing. He's beating in our hearts. God is present within. He's present without. He's everywhere. As we really read these beautiful volumes and we contemplate and we see the presence of God in nature and everything around us, God is shouting out to you in all of his creation, I love you, I love you, I love you. And he just wants you to shout out back to him, I love you, I love you, I love you, and all those things he created to make you happy, to make us happy. He told Luisa at one point, he said, if I had to create, I love each person so much, if I had to create a whole world and universe for each one, I would have done that. But everyone shares the same, but it all belongs to us. That's why we could give it back to him, everything he created. And that we're going to learn more about in the rounds, how we talk about rounds. But if the divine will, after you understand it, is so simple. And every time you go back to read it, it gets simpler and simpler. You understand it better, and you're learning new things each time. This is so simple, children can live it, And there's a drop book, another introductory book written for children, but it's also for adults that explains it too. But this book is really, what I like about this book that we're trying to promote here is that it brings in a lot of things from the catechism, from the scriptures, and it's truly Catholic. It teaches you that this is truly a Catholic thing. Now, Protestants read this book, they're going to want to become Catholic because it talks about the sacraments, it talks about confession, about Eucharist, about the presence of God, the real presence, and how much he loves us and how much he longs to be with us, even in the Eucharist. When you go to communion, I always encourage people, he's with you at least 15, 20 minutes after you receive him. Stay in church, pray, adore him, look at him, love him. He just wants you to love him back. That's all he wants. Embrace him there. All you have to do is just say, I love you, I love you, I love you, Jesus. Looking into yourself. You are a walking tabernacle. He lives within you. So, when you receive him, his body, blood, soul, and divinity, he's flowing in your veins. He's throughout your whole body. Your soul encompasses your whole body. He's everywhere. Just adore him there. And you're going to find that you're growing from receiving the Eucharist, because sometimes we receive the sacraments with lukewarmness, and so it doesn't do us as much good as it would as if we really realize what's really happening, what's the beautiful gift he's given us in his Eucharistic presence. So, we're privileged to be Catholic, first of all. Privileged to have this beautiful gift of the writings that he gave to Luisa. Luisa had to suffer a lot to get these writings. She didn't eat, sleep, or drink for 64 years. She lived on the Eucharist. And that you can get the life of Luisa, the Son of Divine Will, that the Vatican has put out, which is another proof that the Vatican approves of this. Publishing this book, putting it out, all about the life of Luisa. So, I encourage you to just study it. All the quotes in this little book, that we're not going through everything right now, but it's beautiful quotes from the volumes that prove it's from God, it's from the church, it's in the church, from God. And so beautiful to embrace it and to pray it, not just to read, let him soak into your heart and soul. It's a beautiful prayer.